All Elite Wrestling is reportedly doing damage control after CM Punk's explosive interview with ESPN, which could be set to be released today ahead of tomorrow's AEW Collision premiere at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois on TNT. One of the people and persons that he spoke about in the interview is The Elite, and we got an update on The Elite contract negotiations with AEW. Miro speaks about the controversy surrounding CM Punk's return as well as his own return tomorrow at AEW Collision. A possible reason as to why MJF is facing Hiroshi Tanahashi at Forbidden Door has been revealed. We've got the ratings for this week's edition of AEW Dynamite on TBS. Chris Jericho and Sting discussed the tease of a possible match between the two that was on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite. An update on BJ Whitmer having heat prior to his AEW firing this week. Dax Harwood is reportedly involved in All Elite Wrestling Creative, and Jimmy Jacobs has signed with AEW and will be working backstage on the AEW Creative team. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrest News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and the biggest one right now in AEW is CM Punk. I know it's always CM Punk, but certainly a lot's going on because of this explosive interview that he's done with ESPN, where he's blurred the lines between fiction and reality and got a lot of people talking and upset in AEW after this interview, but it hasn't aired just yet. Now, a recent CM Punk interview that reportedly saw him shoot on fellow AEW wrestler Hangman Adam Page has led to, quote, damage control from the promotion. As previously reported, we did a video on this yesterday evening, CM Punk was interviewed by ESPN ahead of his return at AEW Collision on June 17, 2023, that being tomorrow from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. The interview has not yet been publicly released, but is due to be out today, June 16. As of right now, at the time of recording this, the interview is not out. Once it is, we'll discuss it, we'll dissect it, and we'll get you guys' opinion on it, of course. Now, in the interview, it's been reported from sources' accounts that Punk's comments were, quote, confusing, with it not being clear whether he was working or shooting. Now, comments related to Hangman Adam Page, however, were said to be less confusing, with it being apparently quite clear that Punk didn't like Hangman. Dave Meltzer has now addressed the issue, revealing the damage control that was attempted in the wake of the interview. Writing in the current Wrestling Observer newsletter, Meltzer states, quote, there was a lot of internal and external talk in recent days about an interview Punk did. The interview was with ESPN's Mark Raimondi and will be released on June 16, so it's best to wait until it's released to comment. Past much of the talent at the June 19 show were aware of the content, and AEW was hoping that the comments Punk made about Adam Page would not be part of the article/video, but the talent is largely aware of them. This is largely because the company is actively trying to sign Page to a new long-term deal. There was an attempt at damage control going on at press time, but much of the talent was aware of what Punk originally said. So the question becomes, what did he say? Well, we're going to have to wait and see until this interview comes out, but some are describing it as explosive. Now, what happens with CM Punk now that he's back in AEW? Of course, he's going to be part of the AEW Collision brand, an AEW Collision show going forward. But with this discussion about roster splits, etc., the question becomes, well, is he going to be on AEW at some point? And what happens if he's on AEW? What happens to The Elite? Now, the potential plan for The Elite if CM Punk appears on AEW Dynamite has now been revealed ahead of the launch of Collision. AEW will launch its new weekly Collision brand this Saturday, June 17. The show will feature CM Punk's wrestling return, with the former AEW World Champion set to team with FTR to face Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Samoa Joe. This will be Punk's first match since All Out in September 2022, with Punk kept out of the ring because of a tricep injury, in addition to the situation with him and The Elite. When initial reports emerged about Collision, it was indicated that there would likely be a brand split to allow Punk to compete on Collision, and The Elite to work on AEW Dynamite. Khan recently addressed these rumors, noting that AEW currently isn't considering introducing a hard roster split for the entire roster. Per Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, those within Warner Bros. Discovery are expecting Punk to occasionally appear on AEW Dynamite. It was noted that on weeks that Punk would be on Dynamite, the expectation is that members of The Elite and the Blackpool Combat Club would be on Collision. Again, which is quite interesting, suggesting that, again, these two shows will have Punk and the Elite kept separately on them. So when Punk's on Dynamite, they're going to be on Collision. When he's on Collision, they're going to be on Dynamite. That's essentially what they're going with. Now, speaking of the Elite, the question becomes, what's going on with their future right now? We do know they're currently in contract negotiations, and some are concerned that this latest interview of CM Punk may have jeopardized them. Well, we've got a bit of an update as the latest on the Elite's talks with AEW. According to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page have all been negotiating new AEW contracts this year. When Fightful asked for an update this week, they were told that the deals aren't done yet. However, both sides have felt like several deals had been close, with one side noting that could have been said for several months, but not a lot had changed on that front. Those that Fightful spoke to within AEW were confident they'd retain the Elite despite CM Punk returning to the company. Fightful have not been given any update on the Elite and their willingness to work with Punk, though creative is planned for several of them for quite some time. Hangman Page, Omega, and the Bucks have all retained Barry Bloom to represent them throughout this process. It's worth noting that Omega had time added to his deal due to missing out via injury. At this point, between injury time, option years, and any other variables with all four wrestlers, it's very tough to determine exactly when each deal is up respectively. Fightful have been told by WWE sources, of course, they would absolutely have interest in all four talents in the event that they became available, but they don't actually expect that to happen, and that WWE are nowhere near being allowed to legally talk to any of them right now. There were rumours that the Young Bucks had reached out to WWE last year, but sources close to them denied that that was the case. Fightful have been told that most people in AEW expect that each man will remain with All Elite Wrestling on significant money increases. So the question becomes to you guys, do you agree with what's being said there? Do you think that the Elite are going to stay in AEW despite CM Punk's return, or with Punk's return to the company, is that going to jeopardise contract talks with Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Adam Page as well? Now, Miro is on his way back to AEW too. He's going to be part of Collision tomorrow at the United Center. Miro has reacted to the controversy that surrounds fellow star CM Punk as they both gear up for AEW Collision, with CM Punk returning at Collision on June 17 in Chicago. Punk has once again been making headlines over comments in a recent interview. Having promised that he won't know what he's going to say until he says it on June 17, Punk's return to AEW is highly anticipated, and another returning star shared his thoughts on Punk. Miro was interviewed on the Good Karma Wrestling podcast. Quote, "I get along with him fine," Miro said about CM Punk. "Every time we talk, I feel like we have a mutual respect. Yes, so I've never had anything bad like engage with him, but you know, everybody hears a whole bunch of things. But man, if you're not happy with something, just do whatever you want to do and then go cry in your mansion. I don't understand all the lashing out, but everybody's responsible for their own actions. Like I said, I get along with him good. We've talked, we had great interactions, even though we had 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, I don't care. I look at myself. I don't look at other people's plates. That's what the Bible taught me. Don't look at other people's plates. Take care of yourself and everybody else. All you can do is pray for them, and whatever happens, happens." So Miro saying, I get along pretty well with CM Punk. As far as his return to AEW, he said, quote, "I'm very excited to be back in a pro wrestling ring. I've been aching for a long time. The Redeemer's been in the desert looking for answers, maybe finding them, maybe not. We have to find out this Saturday, but I'm very excited to be around the wrestling community and just the fans. I've never been to the United Center, never wrestled there, and people in Chicago are unbelievable, so I'm really looking forward to it." He also revealed how he felt being away from the ring for as long as he has been, stating, quote, "It sucks. It sucks. Just like I said, looking for answers and not getting any. It's not a good place, and not just me, but just overall as a human being, when you have no answers to all of these questions. It just eats you inside, and I had quite a long time to eat myself, even though I'm still at 260 pounds. I ate quite a bit. But I'm aching. I'm aching to come back and to find out what's going on. What's happening? It's been a while." So Miro is hoping that he's going to get answers once he returns to AEW tomorrow. Now, we found out this week on AEW Dynamite, it looks like MJF is going to be facing Hiroshi Tanahashi at Forbidden Door. While MJF has always bashed New Japan in interviews, the AEW World Champion's trash talk towards the Japanese promotion intensified after Double or Nothing ahead of Forbidden Door. In the lead up to the June 25 crossover pay-per-view, Hiroshi Tanahashi appeared via a video to challenge MJF to an AEW World Championship bout this week on AEW Dynamite. Per Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, while Tanahashi still uses his Ace nickname, he's not internally viewed as an unbeatable star. Meltzer noted, quote, politically, Tanahashi is now a guy for years and years and years and years. Tanahashi, Okada, Naito, and who was the fourth guy? Maybe Kota Ibushi or someone. It actually might have been Kenny Omega now that we think about it. But there's 4 guys at New Japan. If we come to the United States or whatever, like when they were working with Ring of Honor, it's like you can't beat these guys. Actually, it was Nakamura who was the 4th guy at the time, and at other points, AJ Styles as well. But anyway, the point is that you couldn't beat them. And then Tanahashi is no longer on that list, so he's a star who can lose, and that's why he wrestled Moxley at the last Forbidden Door show. Of course, Tanahashi was notably defeated by Jon Moxley in the main event of Forbidden Door 2022 for the vacant AEW World Championship. The Ace lost his most recent singles match with Will Ospreay, besting the wrestling veteran at New Japan Strong Resurgence earlier a few weeks ago. So essentially what Meltzer is suggesting there, that the reason Tanahashi is facing MJF at Forbidden Door is because he can lose, and it doesn't really matter. We've got the ratings for this week's episode of AEW Dynamite. With the NBA playoffs in the rearview mirror, it could have been a big week for AEW Dynamite, for a show featuring 2 title matches and a high-stakes battle between Adam Cole and AEW World Champion MJF. Not to mention the fact that the debut of Collision is just days away. There were positives to point to. Instead, according to reporting from WrestleNomics Twitter and Patreon pages, as well as Showbuzz Daily, total viewership for Wednesday's episode was down from the previous week, with that number falling from an average of 903,000 viewers overall to this week 832,000 viewers. Additionally, the key 18 to 49 demographic fell from a 0.33 1 week ago to a 0.30 this week, which meant a 3rd place finish for Dynamite among cable originals. It was beaten out only by the coverage of the Major League Baseball game between the New York Yankees and New York Mets on ESPN, which ranked 1st overall, and an episode of Vanderpump Rules on Bravo. Though the discrepancy in viewership was quite noticeable, with the Yankees and Mets averaging 1.903 million viewers overall, while the Vanderpump Rules pulled in 1.134 million, along with an 18 to 49 demo rating of a 0.42 and 0.41 respectively. Of course, AEW will hope to pick up steam this Saturday with the debut of Collision, marking the return of CM Punk to AEW programming. But Tony Khan and the company have a busy summer ahead of them outside of their new Saturday show, with the latest installment of AEW and New Japan's Forbidden Door set for June 25th, and AEW All In at Wembley Stadium in London, England, scheduled for August 27 as well. Now, some people have been talking actually about the main event angle for Dynamite this week, because it was certainly a very memorable ending. Some are saying one of the more memorable endings in the history of Dynamite. Following Adam Page and the Young Bucks' victory over Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta, the brawl continued between the 2 teams. Eddie Kingston then made a surprise return to the company, continuing his eternal rivalry with Claudio Castagnoli, brawling with Claudio until Moxley broke up the fight. The Young Bucks then attacked Moxley until Konosuke Takeshita ran out to attack them, before Kenny Omega returned to Dynamite for the first time since Double or Nothing, where he finally got his hands on Konosuke Takeshita. Omega was then laid out by a super kick and Stormbreaker from Will Ospreay, of course Omega's opponent at the upcoming Forbidden Door event, to close out the chaotic segment. A segment like that would need an experienced person producing it, and that's exactly reportedly what it had. Per Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, Christopher Daniels was the man responsible for producing the ending of Dynamite. The segment set up a match for this week's AEW Rampage show, pitting Will Ospreay, Jeff Cobb, and Kyle Fletcher against the Best Friends and Rocky Romero. So let me know your thoughts on the ratings for Dynamite this week. One thing that was quite interesting as well was the production this week, because as is always the case with social media, they always highlight and pinpoint botches or anything like that, but this week's episode of Dynamite was packed with action and developments ahead of Forbidden Door. However, along with that excitement were some production gaffes that caught the attention of a number of viewers, including Bully Ray of Busted Open Radio. Speaking on the satellite radio show on Thursday morning, while he highlighted the performances of Adam Cole and MJF, Bully laid out a number of qualms with the production and AEW's use of blood. Quote, "There are things that I saw last night, unfortunately, commanded my attention as much as the great performance of Adam Cole and MJF, Bully said. The bad to me was the use of blood. Bully Ray called out the fact that MJF appeared to be bleeding from the mouth, but only bled for a short period of time. That type of injury, according to Bully, would bleed for much longer. Additionally, Bully felt the bleeding was entirely unnecessary for their specific match. What did that blood really get us?" Bully continued. "The blood did not advance the story in the match, nor did it come into play later on. So it's a gratuitous use of blood that did not help the match take steps forward." Would the match have suffered if there was no blood in the mouth? Not at all. So I don't know why they felt the need to use a super kick that led to MJF bleeding from the mouth. As far as production, he wasn't happy with that either. According to Bully Ray, while the use of blood was unfortunate, the larger problems with the AEW Dynamite opener this week had to do with production woes. I am begging AEW to learn from their production mistakes when it comes to blood, when it comes to catching things that the pro wrestling universe does not need to see, Bully stated. The former WWE star then used the concept of an audience seeing through a magician's trick, making it ineffective, as an example of what AEW's production team did this week. The production is showing us things they shouldn't be showing us, Bully continued, such as MJF spitting whatever was in his mouth into his hands and sliding it under the ring apron. It was a deliberate shot, as if they wanted to show it to us. But the Busted Open co-host pointed out that these mistakes seem to continuously happen in AEW, and it doesn't seem as though people in charge are learning from their mistakes. It's unfortunate, but these unfortunate production errors have happened a multitude of times, Bully said. Most of the time they've happened with Moxley, where they're exposing what Moxley is doing at any particular time when it comes to bleeding. So please, AEW, do a better job of your production when it comes to the aspects of things pro wrestling fans do not need to see. Now, do you agree with what Bully is saying, or is he being too harsh on AEW? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. This week, we also saw a tease of Chris Jericho and Sting facing off in the ring, potentially hinting at a match in the future. Wednesday's edition of AEW Dynamite presented an intriguing possibility. After Chris Jericho suggested that he and Sammy Guevara beat down Darby Allin 2-on-1, Allin revealed that he was not alone that night. This prompted Allin's ally Sting to appear, who initiated a stare down with Jericho. As the two men pointed their bats at each other, many fans were quick to recognize that this moment marked the first ever face-off between the wrestling veterans. While a match between the two has yet to be confirmed, Sting's recent comments certainly indicate that AEW may be heading in that direction. Quote, "I regret not having more time with you, Chris. See you soon," Sting tweeted on Thursday, accompanied by a photo of their Dynamite stare down. A short time later, Jericho issued a message of his own. "Face to face for the first time ever. Cool. Now here's a warning, Sting. Stay out of my shit," he tweeted. Of course, over the past 3 decades, Sting and Jericho have floated between similar locker rooms, starting in WCW in the latter half of the 1990s. While Jericho remained a steady contender and a champion in WCW's Cruiserweight division, Sting was heavily ingrained in a headlining feud with the New World Order. Hope for a singles match was once again restored upon Sting's WWE debut in 2014, but the opportunity for them to meet never materialized. Now, as Sting and Jericho stand within the walls of AEW, their paths are finally crossed, and by the implications of Sting's tweets, it looks like the two legends will see each other again very soon. So Sting versus Jericho, or a tag match, Sting and Guevara versus Darby and Jericho and Guevara versus Darby and Sting. Is that something you'd like to see? Let me know your thoughts on that too. Now, of course, this week saw the firing of BJ Whitmer. AEW producer BJ Whitmer was fired by the company earlier this week after being arrested on charges of domestic violence. Just minutes after his arrest was made public, AEW severed ties with Whitmer, taking to Twitter to post the following statement, quote, "BJ Whitmer has been terminated following his arrest on domestic violence charges. While talent and staff are ultimately responsible for their own personal actions, this behavior is intolerable within AEW. AEW has reached out to offer support to those impacted by his behavior." Now, in an update from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, Whitmer may have been on thin ice in the company even prior to his arrest. Fightful has noted that Whitmer already had backstage heat in the company stemming from how he produced a recent match. It was reported that there is a new backstage hire in AEW. We'll get into that in just a second, but just a bit of update to the BJ Whitmer situation. Dax Harwood, reportedly, is working in creative in AEW. The AEW creative team has undergone a bit of growth recently, with AEW Collision on Tap adding another 2 hours of content to AEW's week. Tony Khan has been assembling a team of sorts to keep the ideas flowing. Per PW Insider, Dax Harwood is also now involved on the creative wing, joining new additions Jimmy Jacobs, we'll get to that in just a second, Will Washington and Brian Danielson having assisting for a short bit. Danielson recently spoke about his own inclusion in the AEW creative role, sharing joining the Brain Trust was somewhat of a loose process and that he and Tony Khan would talk on the phone for hours about wrestling. Quote, "I think we have a lot of similar ideas on wrestling," Danielson explained last month, "and sometimes he says things to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, and we riff off each other really well. When we do it, it doesn't feel like work. When you love wrestling, stuff like that is fun." Along with those recent new additions, the returning former AEW World Champion CM Punk and formerly ousted agent Ace Steel are also expected to be involved with creative specifically for AEW Collision. Now, finally, speaking of creative, I mentioned his name there. Jimmy Jacobs is All Elite. Fightful Select Sean Ross Sapp is reporting that AEW might be getting some more help on the creative ends of things. Fightful Select are reporting that they learned that longtime wrestler turned creative writer Jimmy Jacobs was backstage at AEW Dynamite on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Fightful have been told that Jacobs was a surprise face popping up and exchanged hugs and pleasantries with numerous people at the show. Jacobs has indeed signed with AEW as All Elite Wrestling expanded with Collision debuting on Saturday. Bryan Danielson has also been brought on to help in addition to the hiring of Will Washington. Jacobs has been working for Impact Wrestling since November 2017, where he's been an integral part of the creative team ever since. Jacobs worked for WWE as a creative writer between March 2015 and October 2017. He was fired for taking a photo with members of the Bullet Club who did an invasion outside of Raw. In an update, Fightful are reporting that they have been told that indeed Jacobs has finished up with Impact and is with AEW full-time. So there you go, guys. It's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.